sun hung low over the wide plains of New Mexico, its red glow spilling across the tall grass. A lone horse galloped in the distance, its rider, an Apache woman named Ayanna, holding the reins tight. She had fled her tribe's borderlands to escape raiders who hunted her people. Her long hair streamed behind her like a banner of defiance, but the horse stumbled on a burrowed patch of earth, throwing her violently to the ground. Pain exploded in her leg. When she tried to stand, her right limb twisted uselessly. The horse bolted away, leaving her stranded beneath the burning sky. For hours she lay there, fighting waves of agony. Coyotes howled faintly across the hills as dusk crept in. She dragged herself toward a cluster of rocks, clutching her injured leg and whispering prayers to the Great Spirit. Her strength faded. The stars began to blur when the faint sound of wagon wheels reached her ears. Ayanna blinked through the dust to see a man on a mule-drawn cart. His clothes were patched, his hat wide-brimmed, a lonely farmer returning home. The man, Thomas Grady, nearly passed her by. But when he saw movement in the tall grass, he pulled on the reins. His heart thudded as he spotted the woman. Wild hurt, her dark eyes burning even in pain. "Ma'am?" he called softly, stepping down. She tried to crawl away, fear flashing in her face. "Easy now," he murmured, kneeling and lifting his hands to show he carried no weapon. Her breath came ragged. "Leg," she gasped, pointing weakly. One look told him it was broken clean through. Without another thought, Thomas wrapped her in his coat and lifted her gently into the cart. Her skin burned with fever. Her fingers trembled against his sleeve. He rode fast through the moonlit trail until his small wooden farmhouse appeared beyond a cornfield. Inside, he laid her on a narrow bed, fetched water, and tore linen strips to bind her leg. She whimpered but didn't resist. He whispered low, "You'll be all right now. You're safe here." For 3 days the fever raged. Ayanna drifted between dreams and pain. Thomas sat by her side, changing the wet cloth on her forehead, spooning bits of broth to her lips. When she finally woke fully, the dawn poured gold through the window. She looked around the room. Rough wood walls, an old rocking chair, dried herbs hanging from the ceiling. The farmer sat near the fire, mending his hat. "You're awake," he said quietly, relief softening his worn features. She didn't answer at first, wary eyes studying him. "Why, help?" she asked in broken English. He smiled faintly. "'Cause someone ought to." His voice was plain, honest, the kind that carried no lies. Days turned into weeks. Her leg began to heal under his careful splints. She learned to walk again, leaning on a cane he carved for her. At night, they shared small meals of beans and bread by lamplight, speaking little but understanding much through silence. He learned she was Apache, from the Chiricahua band, her people scattered by soldiers and bounty hunters. She'd lost her family in a raid near Tucson. She spoke of the desert spirits, of freedom, of rivers that once ran wild. Thomas listened, his quiet heart stirred by her voice. He too had lost a wife taken by fever 2 winters ago, leaving the house empty and his soul lonelier than he could bear. Somehow her presence began to fill that hollow place. One evening, a group of armed riders passed by the farm. Through the cracked window, Ayanna saw them. Men in blue coats, soldiers. Her face went pale. "They look for me," she whispered. Thomas stepped outside, heart pounding. The men stopped at his gate, asking if he'd seen a red-skinned woman on the run. His jaw tightened. "Ain't seen anyone," he said. They eyed him suspiciously, then rode off toward the hills. When he returned inside, she was trembling. "You lie." "For me?" He nodded. "Reckon I did." Her eyes shimmered with tears. Days later, the first snow fell. She stood outside, balancing carefully, watching the flakes melt on her palms. Thomas joined her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "You'll need a proper coat soon," he said gently. "When spring comes, I'll take you north to safety." But she turned to him, eyes shining. "I stay," she whispered, "if you want." The words struck deep, more powerful than any vow. He looked at her, this woman who had once been left for dead, now glowing with quiet strength, and nodded. "Then stay." That winter, the small farmhouse became a home again. She filled it with laughter and songs of her people, teaching him Apache words while he taught her how to plant winter wheat. They moved like 2 souls stitched by fate. When spring thawed the earth, she walked without pain. He built a new fence and she tended the fields. One night, under a red sunset, he took her hand and said softly, "You changed this place, Ayanna." "You changed me," she smiled. "You heal me first." Years passed and the plains around them bloomed. Folks whispered in nearby towns about the farmer and his Apache wife, who lived in peace where no one dared to settle. They raised 2 children, a boy with his father's steady eyes and a girl with her mother's wild hair. And though the world outside still drew lines between color and creed, their little ranch stood as proof that kindness could cross them all. When Thomas grew old, he'd sit on the porch watching the horizon. Ayanna would hum softly, weaving baskets by the fire. Sometimes she'd glance toward the hills where she once fell and whisper, "That was the day I died." Then she'd look back at him, smile, and add, "And the day I began to live." And somewhere in the distance, their horses would graze under the open sky. 2 souls who found love in the loneliness of the Wild West. The wind howled across the barren plains as the Apache woman clutched her leg, broken and bleeding beneath the weight of her fallen horse. Dust stung her eyes and the vultures circled above, waiting. She had ridden to escape the soldiers who burned her village, but fate threw her down hard. Every breath was pain. Her tribe was gone, her people scattered, and now she lay helpless in the land of her enemies. Yet deep inside she refused to surrender. Somewhere beyond the horizon she prayed someone still had mercy left in their heart. The lonely farmer heard a faint cry near the canyon as he rode home from town. He thought it was the wind, but then he saw her, a wounded Apache woman sprawled beside her dead horse. For a long moment he hesitated. Helping an Indian could get a man killed in those lands. Still, something in her eyes stopped him from turning away. He lifted her into his wagon, whispering softly, "You're safe now." That night he tended her wounds, ignoring the danger, knowing kindness was rarer than gold in the Wild West. Days turned into weeks and redemption grew quietly between them. She healed, learning to walk again with his help, while he found in her a reason to speak after years of silence. The town whispered, the lawmen glared, yet he stood by her, proud and unafraid. When the same soldiers who chased her came riding to the farm, she stepped forward, no longer broken but reborn. In that dusty dawn, the farmer and the Apache woman faced the world together. 2 souls bound not by blood, but by mercy, courage, and love.